Sorry to be late, but there was a visitor from Bosnia, a lady doctor from Norway, please be seated, who had come to discuss a few things. So that is why I was held for a little while. Anyway, we are back here, alhamdulillah. Okay. Now again, this is a continuation of the same meeting which we ended last week.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. And I promise that inshallah I'll continue to sit with you until perhaps not all, but most of the important questions you have to address me with are finished or exhausted, right?
Inshallah.
Please. Shall we start from the right?
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
But give the introduction. Speak in Arabic, the introduction which I just made.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هذا اليوم ملاقاة مع سيدنا أمير المؤمنين مع الإخوة العرب للإجابة على بعض التساؤلات التي نتعرض لها أو التي تخطر في أذهاننا، وسوف أقوم إن شاء الله بترجمتها إلى اللغة العربية. شكرا.
Assalamu alaikum. The Holy Quran mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya the following verse: وَآوَيْنَاهُمَا إِلَى رَبْوَةٍ ذَاتِ قَرَارٍ وَمَعِينٍ. As Ahmadi Muslims, we understand from this verse that Hazrat Isa alayhi salam and his mother were given a refuge by Allah after the crucifixion in a place as described in this verse. We understand it's Kashmir. Is there any historical record of revelation received by Hazrat Isa alayhi salam during that period, between the period he lived in Kashmir, as I do believe that he was in a holy mission there too, and his status of as a Nabiullah was not taken away from him?
Would you please translate it into Arabic yourself, or would you like him to translate?
السؤال هو: ورد في القرآن الكريم عن سيدنا عيسى وأمه وآويناهما إلى ربوة ذات قرار ومعين، ونحن الأحمديين نعتقد أن سيدنا عيسى أكمل مهمته بعد أن غادر فلسطين واتجه إلى الشرق حتى وصل إلى كشمير. وهل نبوته استمرت معه في هذه المهمة؟ وهل هناك قرائن أو أشياء تاريخية تدل على أنه كان يتلقى الوحي في ذلك الوقت أم لا؟
That's right. This question which you have raised is involved. It's like, the mountain road, it goes winding up and turns many a corner, and questions are raised before we reach the end of the question. So although you have shaped the question in the end in a very different way, while you were building the question, so many other questions cropped up here and there. I thought you would stop at every time, at every corner, and say, look, this is a question, that is a question, that is a question. You missed all of them. So if you permit, I would slightly touch upon those, otherwise people will remain, confused and dissatisfied. Please test.
يقول أمير المؤمنين أن هذا السؤال حلزوني، يمر على نقاط أسئلة كثيرة، فلا بد من إعادة السؤال بطريقة أخرى حتى نجيب على هذه التساؤلات، وهذا ما نحبه ونريده.
You see, first of all, the question is what awa means and what is the incident to which the Holy Quran is referring. People, the non-Ahmadi Muslims, believe, perhaps as during my discussions, it emerged from the discussions, that Hazrat Maryam, before the birth of Jesus Christ, went to a remote place, and there it was given the shelter in Zat-e Qarar, Brabbatin Zat-e Qararin wa Ma'in, and that is the incident to which the Holy Quran is referring. While in fact the style of expression rejects this connotation, because as I understand not only Arabic but all other languages, when a pregnant woman moves from one place to other, you never say they both went from here to there. You don't refer to them as tasniya, you see. So again, the Holy Quran begins with the word ibna. First ibna wa ummuhu. So which means it begins with the reference to two people. and then refers to them in tasniya. So that meaning is absolutely out of question. आयत में जलना आयत वो पढ़े ना full verse. वल जलना अपना मरियम व उम्महु आयतन और आयत read the full verse please.
No, I just got وآويناهما إلى ربوة.
Have Surah ماذا نكان इसमें होगा. I'll read the
say this.
What?
Can I translate this?
Yes, please.
يقول أمير المؤمنين أنه يجب أولا أن نفهم معنى آوى وآويناهما. بعض المفسرين يعتقدوا أن في حادثة مولد سيدنا عيسى أن أمه ذهبت به إلى مكان بعيد ووضعته هناك وأن الآية تشير إلى هذه الحادثة، ولكن يجب أن نتنبه إلى أسلوب الآية. الآية تقول ابنها أولا أويناه وأمه، أي ذكر هو أولا ثم أمه، ثم تحدث عنهما بأسلوب التثنية. وليس في اللغة العربية ولا في اللغات الأخرى يكون الأسلوب بهذه الطريقة. عندما تكون سيدة حامل يتحدث القرآن أو اللغة تتحدث عنهما على أنهما شخصان.
You see, the points which I'm going to raise are twofold. First of all, that incident to which they think this verse also refers has been mentioned in detail in Surah Maryam and other places. And there she is always referred to in a singular. Makanan Sharqiyya, you know that verse I have in mind. It's not two people moving away. It is just Hazrat Maryam with her child. She moves from one place to another and goes and seeks shelter somewhere else to keep away from the public eye during the pregnancy period. Now, there, both are not mentioned as tasniya. Here, first of all, Ibn is mentioned, which already is born, of course. And then his mother. And then the word tasniya refers to both of them. It is surprising how some people, when they want to have some meaning drawn out of the Quran, distort their own language, distort the common understanding, and insist that this refers to just one Mary, pregnant Mary with a child in her womb. This is not so.
This is another one.
This is the other one.
Yes, I know this, but I had already...
No, I'm saying this is the singular which
yes,
I just mentioned.
Yes.
فَأَجَاهَا الْمَخَاضُ إِلَى جِزِ النَّخْلَةِ
No.
قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت
It is واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا.
All singular.
No.
So when this incident has already been covered by the Holy Quran, what right has anybody else to distort this image and refer to the other verse which I have just quoted or you have quoted to also belong to the same incident? The style is so different, they're two different things. First, read this.
يقول أمير المؤمنين أن حادثة الوضع هذه ذكرت في سورة مريم بتفصيل كبير، وكان الحديث عن السيدة مريم وحدها بصيغة المفرد، وعند ذكر ابنها كان يذكر على أنه وليد. يتعجب أمير المؤمنين يقول مع هذا الوضوح فإن هؤلاء الناس عندما يريدون أن يستخرجوا معنى مخالفا للواقع فإنهم يلوون عنق اللغة ويأتون بمعان غريبة. الآية الثانية التي تقول ابن مريم وأمه تتحدث عن ابن مريم كأنه إنسان موجود وأمه إنسانة موجودة، وتحدث عنهما بصيغة المثنى وآويناهما إلى ربوة ذات قرار ومعين.
Now that is one thing which should be understood. The second thing is, where did they both disappear? They went together, there is no doubt about it. And where should they have gone? The Holy Quran points at the place and its features. It's a place which is mountainous, plateau-like, and a place where is peace, ذات قرار ومعين. And there are also many springs. Now this description applies beautifully to Kashmir. There is no doubt about it. But there is only one finger pointing at. at this, there should be other evidence. How on earth could we imagine that this verse is definitely speaking of Kashmir, and how can we fix the place to be that? This is a big issue. Now, if the Holy Quran has spoken on something which relates to Jesus Christ, of course we should expect that the New Testament also should refer to that incident. And when you see another finger pointing at that point, then at the juncture of the two signs, you can recognize the place. Now, Jesus Christ is known to have said that before crucifixion, that he would leave the people and go in search of or in pursuit of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, this is very significant. He made a promise to his people that he would leave them and go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Everyone who has the slightest knowledge of the history of Jews understands from this that earlier than the time of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, 12 tribes of Israel, 10 out of 12 tribes of Israel had been turned out of Judea, and they had to travel. They call it diaspora, They were scattered all over, but they had to travel eastward. And they settled in some eastern countries as they proceeded along the courses. So now, Jesus has promised that I am going to leave you and I would go to pursue these lost tribes of Israel. When you understand this, then the Holy Quran's verse becomes very clear. You see, a prophet has made a promise. How can he die without fulfilling that promise? So if, as the others believe, instead of being crucified, he was lifted to the heaven, where was this promise? He had forgotten, or had God forgotten this promise? So he could not have risen to heaven without fulfilling this promise. But God has also attached inseparably his own mother with him. So they both to go together wherever this verse indicates. And where did they go? Before childbirth we know, but then they came back. Again, we also know that Ava means an escape from danger and a shelter from danger. So the danger to both of them appeared during the time of crucifixion or before that, with the great hostility shown by the Jewish people towards him and his mother and all the others. God promised that these two I have saved, and I have removed them from the place of danger to a place where there is peace, shelter, mountainous area and springs. So where should Jesus go after crucifixion? Obviously in the direction which is set first by the Quran and second by the Bible. According to the Quran, the area is described. According to the Bible, the people are described who must have settled in that area. Otherwise his promise will be wrong. So if you trace the exodus of the Jews, the 10 tribes towards east, now the Christian scholars, the Western scholars themselves now agree that the people of Afghanistan and the people of Kashmir are of Jewish origin, Israelites. And anyone can see that, looking at them is so easy, because their features, their nomenclature, look at the tribes of Afghan tribes, Isa Khel, Musa Khel, this Khel, that Khel. Such terminology is not in usage in India anywhere else, only among the Afghans. And the names of the places when you reach Kashmir are surprisingly those which were used in Palestine in olden days. And then the Takht Sulaimani and this, you read the nomenclature, particularly this is mentioned in the book of Hazrat Islam under the title Masih Hindustan Mein, Messiah in India. Now, I know that answer has become too big. I'll stop here. But by pointing out that this verse leads to a place which is not mentioned as Kashmir. I agree. No name is mentioned, but to a place of a certain description. The other biblical verse leads us to follow the course, directs us to follow the course of how people of the house of Israel. Wherever they went, Jesus must have gone. And this is established that they went and settled in Kashmir. Now the verse does not apply to Afghanistan. It's far from being a piece of an abode of peace and mountain, the sort of Jannah which is described in this verse does not apply to Afghanistan, but to Kashmir, of course. So this is only a partial answer to the second part of the question. Then I'll turn to the third one. Right?
يقول أمير المؤمنين أن هذه الآية تشير إلى بعض السمات التي يتميز بها المكان الذي ذهب إليه أو آوى إليه سيدنا عيسى وأمه. قال ذات ربوة ذات قرار ومعين، أي أنها مكان جبلي فيه الأمن وفيه السكينة والطمأنينة وفيه ينابيع الماء متوفرة. إذن هذه إشارة إلى هذا المكان، يحتمل أن يكون هذا هو المكان، وهذا الوصف ينطبق تماما على كشمير، ولكنه لا يعطي الإجابة الحاسمة على أن هذا المكان هو كشمير. لو نظرنا إلى منبع آخر للمعلومات وتلاقى الاثنان في نقطة واحدة، هذه تحدد المكان. هناك في الكتاب المقدس ورد عن سيدنا عيسى أنه إنما جاء لخراف بني إسرائيل الضالة، أي إلى قبائل إسرائيل الضالة. وفي وقته لم يكن هناك في فلسطين إلا قبيلتين فقط، أما القبائل العشرة فكانت قد تفرقت في الدياسبورا أو الشتات وأخرجت من فلسطين إلى المشرق، إلى العراق وأفغانستان وإيران والهند. وهو كان قد وعد بأنه جاء لهؤلاء فلا بد وأن يذهب إليهم. بعد حادثة التعرض للصلب وهجوم واضطهاد اليهود وبحثهم عنه لقتله، كان لابد وأن يهرب من هذه الأخطار وأن يأوي إلى أمن الله، فآواه الله إلى هذا المكان. فما كان يمكن أن يصعد إلى السماء أو يذهب إلى أي مكان آخر إلا إذا نفذ هذا الوعد وذهب إلى قبائل بني إسرائيل وأدى مهمته معهم.
And the second point, the mother did not go to the heaven with him.
كما أن أمه
here, Awena means both of them were taken away.
والآية تشير وآويناهما، أي أن أمه أيضا كانت معه، فهي أيضا لم تذهب إلى السماء وهو لم يغادرها، فالاثنان بقيا على الأرض ليتمم المهمة التي جاء من أجلها. العلماء الآن التاريخيون يقولون ويوافقون على أن اليهود ذهبوا إلى بلاد الشرق في الأماكن التي أشار إليها، ولو أن أحدا زار هذه الأماكن ونظر في ملامح هؤلاء الأقوام ودرس عاداتهم وأشكالهم وعقائدهم وبعض الأسماء الموجودة هناك لتبين أن أصولهم من بني إسرائيل. وأنا شخصيا ذهبت إلى كشمير ورأيت في سرينجر السكان هناك كأنك ترى بيت المقدس، الوجوه وجوه فلسطينية بيضاء ذات سمات خاصة لا توجد في الهنود أبدا، وكل من حولهم يختلف عنهم في هذا الشكل. إذن هو ذهب إلى هذا المكان ليتمم مهمته.
Excellent translation. You see, in shorter time than I said, he covered everything with the grace of Allah. Now, the second thing about the last thing, particularly about the ilham or wahi, which must have continued wherever he went along with him, because he was still the prophet of God. So there is no doubt about it. This must continue. But there was a difference between the wahi which he did receive from God, and the wahi which was distorted later on by those who recorded the Bible and, prepared 4 different books in the name of Allah, but nobody knows for certain whether these are the very things which happened or something else happened. There is even St. John, who invented some new things which have never been mentioned in the earlier 3 scripts of Bible, that is Matthew, Luca and Mark. They are not mentioned, and he invented, and the almost entire philosophy of eternal companionship of the Son with God is built on that one sentence found in the Gospel of St. John. I'm just giving you example of how unreliable they became. You must have heard so much from Christians. He was Word, Jesus was Word, Word was with God, and God was eternal, and this Word became Jesus later on. You read the Old Testament about the creation, don't find any reference to this word. You read the 3 Gospels I have just mentioned, you read no reference whatsoever to this word. This is an invention of the mind of St. John, and they built Christianity on this word, on his word alone, while he had never seen Jesus Christ himself. So what I mean to say is, you cannot expect Jesus Christ to condone the mistakes which were added onto the Bible after he had departed. The Holy Quran, when it refers to this incident, when God would inquire from him, did you do that? He said, Kuntu alayhim shahidam ma dumtu fihim. Falamma tawaffaytani kunta anta raqib alayhim. Ma dumtu fihim is very important stage. As long as he remained there, the Bible was not twisted. But when he left them, then anything could happen. So you can't expect the same Bible to be found during his hijrah. It has to be a different version. We had no record of that. But with the grace of Allah, Hazrat Masih Maud was told by Allah that God would make the earth throw up the evidence, more and more evidence, in favor of this doctrine which God has guided you to. So only a few years ago, about 2 decades ago I think, within the 2 decades, a book was published from Oxford University, which was a research paper. That research paper is entitled Among the Dervishes. And this speaks of a scholar who went in search of Dervish tribes in Herat to find out about their culture, the way what they believe in, how they practice things. And he writes in that book that I was surprised to discover a clan among the Pathan which called itself Christian Muslims. He said, what do you mean by Christian Muslim? Either you call yourself Christian or Muslim. So, and the name of that tribe was Musai. They related to Moses. And the head of the clan was Abba Yahya. Abba is a Jewish term of their elders, Abba. So Abba Yahya, he said, I went to him, although it was not the part of my subject, but out of inquisitiveness, I just went there. And he told me a most surprising thing. He said, Jesus Christ, you think, was crucified and died upon cross. This is your thought. You're absolutely wrong in this. Jesus Christ was saved by Allah from that accursed death upon cross. Not only that, he migrated from that place. And while during his migration, he was heading for Kashmir. Now this is the evidence of this Christian scholar with reference to a Pathan tribe which does not even know of Ahmadiyyat, never heard of it. He says, while on the way to Kashmir, he stopped here and preached us the true gospel. And that gospel which he taught is still preserved with us in the form of rolls. And we have them, and there is no mention of Trinity, no mention of his being Son of God, no mention of all the distortions which you find in your testaments. So they are wrong, they have been interpolated. So he said this is because it was it was his blessing which led us to truth. And because this teaching which he gave us was pure and simple and believed in the unity of God. So when Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and his message reached us, without hesitation we accepted him. But we remembered that the first benefactor who led us to the glory of Muhammad Rasulullah was Jesus Christ. We said we shouldn't forget him. So we decided, the elders decided, to continue to call ourselves Christian Muslims. So this was the reason why they were called Christian Muslims. Then he said that he went to Kashmir, remained there, and then once again revisited us, and then went back. And he said we also call him Jesus of Nazareth and of Kashmir. He said, why these two things, of Nazareth and Kashmir? Simply because he was born in Nazareth and died in Kashmir. All this evidence was not concocted by Ahmadis. Every sane man can see that. And the tribe is a reality of history. It does exist there still. We sent another person to investigate, and he fully corroborated the statement of this book. So this is how Allah brings up truth slowly and gradually for those who see. So he did receive wahi, but what that wahi was, unless some scholars study the whole script which is left there, we will not fully really know, definitely know. But we also know that some of Jesus' ilhamat or wahi or revelations are found on stones, inscribed on stones, scattered over Kashmir as well as Nepal, etc. So already a scholar has gone from America, a young scholar who had prepared his task quite in depth and satisfactorily, and he knows what he's looking for. So while he was going to Kashmir, he also met me on the way to Kashmir here in London. And I also discussed with him all the various aspects. He said, look here, my objective is to discover a written proof at all, if at all, of Jesus' presence and his sayings. So I hope Allah grants him light and success. If he returns with some treasures of Jesus' writing, then inshallah your question will be answered, not in generalities, but I could show you this is an ilham of Jesus which he received during that period and that period. Right?
فيما يتعلق بالجزء الخاص بالوحي، يقول أمير المؤمنين أن سيدنا عيسى كان نبيا وهاجر نبيا ومات نبيا، وعلاقة النبي بالوحي لا تنقطع، فلا بد أنه قد تلقى الوحي في كل رحلته حتى توفاه الله. ولكن ليس تحت أيدينا الآن هذا الوحي، ولكن هناك عالم أمريكي اتجه نحو هذه الوجهة، وهو قد قابل حضور ويريد أن يحصل على بعض هذا الوحي، ونرجو إن شاء الله أن يجد شيئا من هذا الوحي منقوشا على بعض الأحجار، وعندئذ يكون هناك الدليل القاطع على الأمور التي أوحى بها الله سبحانه وتعالى إلى سيدنا عيسى. ولكن يجب ألا ننسى أن لا نتوقع أن الوحي الذي نجده مكتوبا في الإنجيل هو نفسه الوحي الذي جاء لسيدنا عيسى، وقد وضح القرآن هذه النقطة، لأن الناس قد حرفوا وزوروا كثيرا في هذه الأشياء. مثلا في إنجيل يوحنا هو الذي اخترع كلمة كان في البدء الكلمة والكلمة كان عند الله، وهذه الأشياء لا تجدها موجودة في الأناجيل الأخرى ولا في العهد القديم. وبنيت القضية كلها العلاقة بين الله وبين عيسى كأنه ابنه أو كلمته بهذه الطريقة المشوهة، ولا يعتبر سيدنا عيسى مسؤولا عن هذا، وقد برأه القرآن في آيات كثيرة في هذا الحوار. أنت قلت للناس اتخذوني وأمي إلهين كذا فكان يجيب لا، لقد كنت عليهم شهيدا ما دمت فيهم فلما توفيتني كنت أنت الرقيب عليهم. أي كأن القرآن يبين أنه ليس مسؤولا عن هذه الأخطاء التي أدخلها الناس من بعده. على أي حال، هناك أيضا بعض العلماء الذين جابوا هذه المناطق إلى أفغانستان في الطريق إلى كشمير، وهناك في حيرات قابلوا بعض القبائل أو الجماعات التي تسمى موساي نسبة إلى موسى، وهذا يدل على أنهم من أصل يهودي. ووجد أن رئيس الجماعة أو القبيلة هذه يسمى أبا يحيى، ويحيى اسم يهودي وأبا لقب للكبار من اليهود. هذه القبيلة كانت أو تسمي نفسها المسلمون المسيحيون أو المسيحيون المسلمون، فتعجب كيف أنتم مسيحيون ومسلمون في نفس الوقت. قالوا أن عيسى جاء إلى هنا، قال عيسى هذا قد ارتفع إلى السماء، قال لا هذا خطأ، أو صلبوه ومات في فلسطين، قالوا لا هذا خطأ وجاء عندنا وبلغنا رسالته.
After he was saved from death upon crucifixion.
بعد أن نجاه الله من حادثة الصليب جاء إلينا هنا ودعانا وآمنا به وكان يدعو إلى التوحيد، وبعد ذلك جاء النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وجاء الإسلام.
He also said, this is mentioned in the book, that he passed through us while on way to Kashmir.
Yes. Yes.
That is also mentioned, Kashmir, yes.
ولما جاء النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم دخلنا في الإسلام وأمنا به، لكن كان الفضل الأول لسيدنا عيسى لأنه هو الذي بشرنا بمجيء النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، ولذلك نحن نسمي أنفسنا المسلمون المسيحيون. وكان سيدنا عيسى يمر بيننا في طريقه إلى كشمير حيث ذهب إلى هناك.
And he died in Kashmir. That is why we call him
نعم.
موسى. Yes, please.
وتوفي في كشمير، ولذلك نحن نسميه يسوع الناصري ويسوع الكشميري، لأنه ولد في الناصرة ومات في كشمير.
نعم.
وسيدنا المسيح الموعود عليه السلام هو الذي أنبأنا وأخبرنا بأن الله سبحانه وتعالى قال له في الوحي أن الأرض سوف تخرج هذه الأنباء، وهذا ما حدث، لأن هؤلاء الناس الذين ذهبوا واكتشفوا هذه الأشياء واكتشفوا السكرولز أو الأوراق التي توجد بها هذه الأمور، عرفنا الأشياء الكثيرة عن رحلة سيدنا عيسى في هذه الأقاليم.
Excellent. Everything is covered. Next, please.
You have another question? Okay. Then,
That verse I wanted to read.
yes, sir.
وَجَعَلْنَا ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ وَأُمَّهُ آيَةً. They were a sign of Allah. وَآوَيْنَاهُمَا إِلَىٰ رَبَّةٍ ذَاتِ قَرَارٍ وَمَعِينٍ. This is very clear that it's not referring to the same incident where Mary alone is said to have migrated from one place to another.
There is also the birth of Isa. Is it an ayah? I think his Najah from the crucifixion.
Yes,
Is the ayah?
that is ayah, of course. Yes. That is also a point, but another discussion will begin. So
Yes,
yes. Please.
There is another question. Usually some Arabs give certain signs of the Imam Mahdi. For instance, his name, his origin from among the Prophet's progeny, being from Arabia. Are these the principal signs for the Imam Mahdi? If not, what are the real signs for the advent of Al-Mahdi?
You see, what are signs? Those who distinguish between one thing and another, or those who confuse things. First, this is what should be understood. If there is a sign, so-called sign, instead of leading you from darkness to truth, it leaves you halfway where you don't know whether it is darkness or truth. Then what is the purpose of that sign? Now, these scholars, I call them medievalists. They do not go all the way back to Hazrat Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and understand his prophecies in the light of the wisest of prophets, who spoke like Jesus Christ, sometimes in parables, sometimes in metaphors, but stop midway and look at the scholars born during the politicization of Islam in that period, who were very harsh in their attitude, very, sword-minded, trigger-happy people. So they understood Islam with reference to whatever they knew of that age. And the mullahs of today, I don't understand their attitude. Instead of going all the way back to Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Quran and trying to infer sensible, acceptable meaning with reference to this age, they return halfway and stop there and say, Mullah said this, Mullah said that, and that Imam said this and that Imam said that. As he understood, he must have been right. And they destroy the whole thing with reference to the Quran and the Hadith, and they lose the meaning. Now, during that period, many traditions were in rotation. And those traditions, as I understand, if they contradicted each other, they could not be all true. If they apparently contradicted each other and you delve deeper into them, you could have found some system of reconciliation and compromise. But they did not bother about it. These ulama of that age period, they accepted everything verbatim, word for word, exactly as it is. And they didn't bother to consider that this will create problems, contradictions attributed to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And they didn't bother to see that these things can happen accidentally as well. How could you believe an imam to be from God if his name was Muhammad, if his mother's name was Amna, if his father's name was Abdullah, and he belonged to the progeny of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if he happened to claim to be Imam Mahdi? This is the question. If these are really signs which do not confuse things, then there was exactly such an Imam born in Yemen. Why have you rejected him? Why don't you believe in him? Was it Yemen or no, Sudan? Sudan. The Mahdi of Sudan fulfilled these requirements. And unfortunately, he met with disaster ultimately and has become a part of history. So the question is, this is not only the one person, there are others who happen to have fulfilled these criteria. There is one Maulana Muhammad Jaunpuri of India. He also happened to fulfill this criteria. So if these traditions really speak of distinctive signs, then all Muslims who insist on these traditions must believe first on them. Forget about the Mahdi of the Qadian. But before that, these have already been fulfilled. Why do they reject them? So when they have rejected the sign, why do they demand this sign from us? The sign which they have already rejected?
Yeah.
Now you see the argument.
يقول أمير المؤمنين أن العلماء ما هي الآية أو ما هي العلامة؟ هل هي شيء ليعرف الإنسان عنده الطريق، أم هي شيء يقف عنده ويتحير ولا يعرف إلى أين يذهب؟ هؤلاء العلماء من الذي يسميهم علماء القرون الوسطى كانوا ذوي عقليات جامدة متحجرة تميل إلى السيف، قبلوا بكل الأحاديث ما تعارض منها وما توافق وكتبوها كما هي وأخذوا بها كما هي، وهذا شيء عجيب. الآن علماء هذه الأيام بدلا من أن يعودوا إلى النبع الصافي إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وإلى نظمه إذا بهم يقفون عند آراء هؤلاء العلماء ويتمسكون بها رغم أنها تحيرهم وتضللهم. إذا كانت الأسماء اسم الأب واسم الأم والكنية ومثل هذه الأشياء من الأدلة أو من العلامات الراسخة التي تبين الإمام المهدي، فقد ظهر كثير من الأشخاص يحملون هذا الاسم محمد وعبد الله وأمه آمنة وينتمي إلى البيت مثل المهدي السوداني وغيره من الناس. فلماذا لم يؤمنوا بهم؟ لو كانوا فعلا يجدوا في هذه الأوصاف علامات يقينية على صدق المهدي لكان من الواجب أن يؤمنوا بهؤلاء الأشخاص. صحيح أنهم قد هلكوا ولم يوفقوا في أي عمل من الأعمال التي يجب أن يقوم بها الإمام المهدي، ولكن هذه الصفات كانت متوفرة فيهم، فكيف يطالبوننا بأن تتوفر فينا هذه الشروط التي لم يؤمنوا بها هم في غيرنا؟
Another example of the same, a few years ago in Mecca, a party of armed men under leadership fulfilled all the requirements of one of the ahadith about the Mahdi. He would make khuruj from here, then he will go and stand by the wall of the Mecca of Khana Kaaba and announce his Mahdiviyyat from there, and all these things were fulfilled verbatim, letter by letter. You know what the Saudis did to them? They slaughtered them, all of them. Did not spare a single soul. So when a Mahdi fulfills these requirements which you demand from us to be full literally, you slaughter them. So which Mahdi would you believe in then? You see? Please.
وهناك مثال آخر كان في السنوات القريبة عندما ظهر أحد الأشخاص مع جماعة مسلحة وتوفرت فيه كل هذه الصفات من ناحية الأسماء، وذهب إلى الكعبة وجلس قبالتها وتلقى البيعة هناك وأعلن أنه الإمام المهدي، وهذا كله تحقيق لبعض الأحاديث. لم يصدقوه ولم يقبلوا دعوته كإمام مهدي، بل قتلوه وكل من معه دون أن يدعوا أحدا منهم على قيد الحياة. فأي مهد إذن هذا الذي سوف يقبلونه؟ وما هي الصفات التي يجب أن تتوفر في المهدي لكي يقبلوه؟
Now another hadith. Now if you take these hadiths literally, you know what would happen? There is one hadith which tells us that yudfanu mai fi qabri. The Mahdi, and also it is said about Jesus Christ, yudfanu mai fi qabri. Now it's not by my side, it is fi qabri. Mudfanu mai may be misunderstood as by my side, but no, it's fi qabri, in my grave. Now they say, ask the mullahs from Pakistan, you know, they many times come and inquire from me. Said, where did Hazrat Mirza Sahib die? Where did he die? I said, in Lahore. Where was he buried? I said, in Qadian. You see, this is hadith. Yudfanu mai fi qabri. I said, all right. First of all, tell me, is there any one single Muslim today living who would dare anybody to open the grave of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and bury anyone, whatever he is? He would rather die, slaughtered himself, than permit anybody to dishonor this grave. He said, no. I said, if somebody claims to be a Mahdi, would you permit him? Would you promise him that, all right, we will bury you in that grave? No, what you will say would be a different thing. You will say, you are the Mahdi, okay. If you are the Mahdi, you must fulfill the traditions. And that means when you die, if you are buried in that grave, then we will accept you, not before that. All the life he is denied, poor man. See, as a false man, because the hadith is not fulfilled. When he dies as a false man, who would bury him in that grave? How on earth could you fulfill this? Use wisdom, common sense. You know, I can suggest a meaning which applies to which if applied to the touchstone of common sense and human nature, reads so well, so beautiful. when you say somebody is like me in origin, somebody is like me in death, don't oppose him. You can express it that as if my father is his father, my mother is his mother, my name is his name. Don't separate us as far as our birth and coming into the world is concerned. We come from the same source. This is an expression also in other languages.
Yes.
And when you say somebody dies my death, that is a holy death, there is nothing wrong with that. You say as if he is in my grave. In Urdu we say, will you be buried in his grave? Which means that do you have the same end as he has? So this could be the only meaning of these traditions. But they are not signs as separating the confusion from the clear truth. Because as I have expressed already, they lead from something to confusion, and insoluble confusion. After that, I'll quote a hadith, which I consider a sign. You can all criticize this if you please. You are invited to do whatever you like.
Can we add to this the saying that he is from my progeny, he is from Fatima, my daughter?
Of that, I'll come later. It's a separate question.
Okay.
Because I don't want to confuse it here.
Yes, okay. يقول أمير المؤمنين لو أخذنا هذه الأحاديث بمنطقها الحرفي لخرجنا بأشياء غير معقولة. فمثلا الحديث الذي يقول عن الإمام المهدي أنه يدفن معي في قبري، وليس هناك شك في كلمة في قبري، ليس بجواري ولكن في قبري. فهل هناك مسلم هل هناك مسلم على الأرض هذه الأيام أو في أي وقت آخر يقبل أن ينبش قبر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ليدفن فيه أي إنسان آخر سواء كان المهدي أو غير المهدي؟ وهناك بعض العلماء من باكستان يأتون إلى حضور ويسألونه أين متى المسيح الموعود؟ يقول في لاهور. وأين دفن؟ يقول في قاديان. يقول له ها هو الحديث يقول يدفن معي في قبري، فهو لم يدفن في قبري. يقول كيف يفكر هؤلاء الناس؟ هل ننتظر حتى يموت المهدي وندفنه في قبر النبي ثم نقبل به مهدي؟ لأنه إذا لم يدفن في قبر النبي فهو ليس المهدي. كيف سيكون الإيمان به؟ لابد هذه الأمور أن تؤخذ بالمعنى الذي يليق بها. ويرى حضور مثلا لو فهمنا هذا الحديث على أنه عندما يقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه يدفن معي في قبري، كأنه يبين أن حياته حياتي وموته موتي، لا تفرق بيني وبينه في الحياة وفي الموت. ومعنى ذلك أن نطيعه بناء على اتباعه للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. كما يقول أنت أبي أنت ابني، كل هذه لا يعني شخصيا، وإنما يعني العلاقة التي عندما أقول تدفن في قبري هذه معناه أنك قريب جدا مني وأنك مثلي تماما. وهناك أمثلة أخرى سوف يضربها.
See, these traditions should be understood with reference to a verse of Jesus regarding Jesus Christ. You understand the verse, then you understand these hadiths. If you don't understand the verse, you will not understand. The Holy Quran tells that Jesus said, Salamun alayya yawma wulidtu wa yawma amutu wa yawma ubathu hayya. So, Wiladat and Maut, they are referred by Jesus. And with reference to the future Imam, Muhammad is also speaking in the same terms. That his Wiladat will be holy as well as with peace from Allah, and as well as his death. So don't mock at him, don't laugh at him, don't separate him from me. If you do it, you will be separating him from me, you know.
No.
So these things are metaphorical, spiritual things. They should be understood in relation to the Quranic versions, Quranic verses.
أن هذه الأحاديث تفهم على ضوء الآية الكريمة التي تتحدث عن سيدنا عيسى والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا. فهو ذكر موته وذكر حياته وذكر موته. فالسلام في الموت والسلام في المولد هذه كلها أيضا وصف بها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، فكأنه يريد أن يقول لا تهزأوا به، لا تسخروا منه، لا تعصوه، بل امنحوه السلام.
Now, one tradition, there's so many traditions. There are other things which I must point out, that no Mahdi could be considered as Mahdi who has lived his life and Jesus has not appeared during his lifetime. This is something very important which should be understood by all these people who are in search of a sign. Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah is consistent on this, that Mahdi would appear first and then Jesus Christ, and both will share the same age. So all the Mahdis, whether they are Shia Mahdis or Sunni Mahdis of the past, do not qualify this test. They're out of the contest. Secondly, there is a tradition which, and this is why, surprisingly, nobody claimed to be Messiah, because they thought he would descend from heaven, and no false man could make him appear from heaven. So surprisingly, they all claim about Mahdiyyat, but don't claim about Messiah. They know it's not possible for them because their understanding about Messiah was wrong, and it could not be fulfilled according to their understanding. That the prophecy could not be fulfilled according to their understanding. Now let's turn to another tradition which speaks of heavenly signs, which are beyond the scope of any man. Hazrat Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam speaks of the two signs in the words, وَإِنَّ لِمَهْدِيِّنَا آيَتَيْنِ لَمْ تَكُونَا مُنْذُ خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ أَوَّلُهَا أَنْ يَنْكَسِفَ الْقَمَرُ فِي أَوَّلِ لَيْلَةٍ مِنْ رَمَضَانَ وَتَنْكَسِفُ الشَّمْسُ فِي النِّصْفِ مِنْهُ وَلَمْ تَكُونَا مُنْذُ خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. I have already spoken on this, haven't I?
Yes, but with no detail.
No detail. So these are the two signs which could not have been, first of all, forged by anyone who used there were people who used to forge hadith. No man could forge such a hadith because it relates to something which is heavenly, and it could not serve the purpose of any false claimant. You see, this is also very interesting. So many Mahdis are found in history, so-called Mahdis. None of them, without exception, has shown the advent of Jesus Christ in any form. Is absolutely dumb and numb over it. So how could he be the same person? And none of them has pointed to these two heavenly signs, because man could not control the heavenly signs. They're only in the control of God. So because it did not serve the purpose of any false man, how a false man could imagine such a thing? And for what purpose? Every hadith which was distorted or which was concocted had some purpose, some ulterior motive to serve. And with this hadith there is no ulterior motive, because it's something beyond human knowledge, human control. So the two signs are, the moon will eclipse on the first of the nights, and the sun would eclipse in the middle of the days of Ramadan. Now, I have read old scholars who have written very clearly. I have got some references which I'll speak during my address in Jalsa Salam.
Inshallah.
They understood the meaning before Ahmadiyyat, much before that. That Huzur Akram Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam could only refer to the 3 nights of the moon eclipse and 3 days of the sun eclipse. And they understood, although they were many hundreds of years before, they were wise people and honest people. At least they understood by that time the nature of the eclipses, because this was scientifically discovered. So with reference to that phenomenon, they say, the moon can get eclipsed only in 3 nights, 13, 14 and 15. The sun can get eclipsed only in 3 days, 27, 28, 29. So they inferred from this, obviously, that Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam must have been referring to 3 moon nights to be the first of the moon nights. Of these nights, the moon of the first night would eclipse. That is what they understood. And of the days of the sun, middle day was 29th, 28th, 27, 28, 29. So this is what they understood. And this is exactly how it happened. In 1894, full 5 years after Jamaat Ahmadiyya came into being in 1889, and the claim of Madhaviyat was made. So surprisingly, this sign came to be fulfilled exactly like this. On the 13th of the Ramadan in 1894, the moon got eclipsed, 13th moon. And on the 28th, the sun got eclipsed. How could a false man even imagine such a thing to have happened? And no one has ever claimed this. So this sign has come to fulfill. Only some Pakistani mullahs, I mean those who don't know the true spirit of Arabic language, they say, no, we don't believe that because he said first of the month. And the first of the month is when the moon appears just as a slight, slice on the heaven. That should have been eclipsed. I say, for God's sake, Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was Afsahul Arabi Ba'da Kitabillah. If he knew from God, as you tell us, that it would be the first moon of the first moon during the period of Hilal, that is the 3 first nights, that would be eclipsed. He should have used the word Hilal. Why did he say Qamar? If you have Hilal in mind positively, you would never refer to it as Qamar. Qamar is a general name also applicable to all the phases of moon, I agree. But when an Arab has Hilal in mind, he would never refer to it as Qamar. There is Royat Hilal committees. If somebody says Royat Qamar committee, won't you laugh at him? Say, what a stupid man? No, it's Royat Hilal. He said, why not? The Qamar is the general name, it can also be applied to the moon. He said, all right, but we know Arabic better than you do. When you think of Hilal, you speak of Hilal. So that is a sign that Rasulullah knew it was not Hilal, which was spoken of. It was some other night, which was the first of the eclipse nights which have been created by nature. So the sign is there, is for the rest of the world, for the world to recognize it and accept, or to reject it as early people have been rejecting the signs of Allah. Right? I'm told the time is over now. So although the meeting becomes very short with you, I don't know why. Perhaps I take too long a time. But inshallah, we'll sit again. We'll meet again after Jalsa this time. Is it right? After Jalsa, inshallah. And we'll continue until all your questions, I hope, are resolved. Okay? So, but what about the translation?
I will do the translation if Hudur.
Okay. We'll continue.
We continue next week.
Okay.
يقول
In the same program?
Yes, same program.
Okay, please.
We start from here.
Yes.
يقول أمير المؤمنين أن الآيات اليقينية هناك آيتان. الآية الأولى أولا هو أنه لا بد وأن يكون المهدي مع المسيح ابن مريم. الحديث النبوي الصحيح يصر ويؤكد على أن ابن مريم سيكون موجودا في عهد المهدي وسيتقابلان وسيصلي المسيح خلف المهدي. والعجب أن كل من ادعى المهدوية لم يشر أبدا إلى المسيح أو وجود المسيح، أو لم يدعي أحد بأنه المسيح الموعود. إذن كل هؤلاء لا ينطبق عليهم دعوى المهدوية. العلامة الثانية هي العلامة السماوية التي لا يستطيع أحد أن يلعب بها، وليست في يد البشر وإنما هي في يد الله سبحانه وتعالى. وهناك حديث عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن وجود آيتين للإمام المهدي لم تكون لأحد منذ خلق السماوات والأرض، أو لم تكون منذ خلق السماوات والأرض، وهي خسوف القمر في الليلة الأولى من رمضان وكسوف الشمس في الوسط منه. وهذه الآية لم يستخدمها أي أحد من الذين ادعوا المهدوية، لأنها لم تحدث لأحد منهم. كما أن هذه الأحاديث لا يمكن أن تكون من وضع أحد، لأن الأحاديث الموضوعة أو المزورة تكون تعتمد على الكلمات ولمصلحة أحد من الأشخاص، ولكن مثل هذا الحديث ليس في مصلحة أحد، لأنه ليس هناك من يستطيع أن يتحكم في الخسوف والكسوف ويأتي بهما في وقت معين، ولذلك لم يستخدمهما أحد من الذين ادعوا بالمهدوية. ولكن الإمام المهدي والمسيح الموعود عندما حدثت هذه الآية حدثت تماما بحسب ما وصف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، وعندما كان هو يدعي بأنه الإمام المهدي وأنه المسيح الموعود. هناك بعض من ينكر حدوث هذه الآيات رغم وقوعها، معتمدا على أن الهلال لابد أن ينخسف في الليلة الأولى من رمضان. كيف ينخسف الهلال؟ الهلال لا يكاد يرى في ذلك الوقت. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يتحدث عن القمر، وفي أول الشهر ليس هناك قمر، القمر يكون بعد الثلاث ليالي الأولى. من أراد أن يقبل بهذا المعنى فهذا عناد لا نعرف كيف نتفق معه، ولكن على أي حال لقد تحققت تماما في حالة المسيح الموعود والإمام المهدي، على العالم أن يتنبه لها ويؤمن بها، ومن يكفر بها فكثيرا ما كفروا بآيات واضحة مثل هذه. From this there is a point inshallah next time, because Hudur says that the first night is Hilal. Some people says, oh, it is a miracle and Allah will make it.
I have that in mind.
Okay.
During our next meeting, we'll start with this.
Inshallah.
Okay, inshallah. I have very clearly that in mind.
Yes.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.